contacted about a commissioning opportunity, composition of a new concerto for electric violin featuring Tracy and the composer Roberto Sierra, one of our most distinguished American composers. And it was a great opportunity for our youth orchestra.
My name is Roberto Sierra and I'm a composer. The idea to do this was Tracy Silverman. We met years back where one of my orchestral works was played, and he came to meet me and he said, "Oh, we should work together." I said, "Of course."
And I heard the Nashville Symphony playing a piece of his, and it had a lot of Latin rhythms and Latin elements in it and kind of jazzy stuff. I was like, this is exactly the kind of mixture that I'm looking for in the works that I like to play.
When we think about musicians of the past who really broke the mold and who really pushed boundaries, we look to them as icons and we revere their works as being innovative. And in order for this art form that we love to continue to thrive, we need more people who push the boundaries. So when we expose our students to composers who push those boundaries and think outside the box and compose with storytelling and imagination, the way that Roberto Sierra composed this piece and the way that Tracy Silverman performed it, we teach them to think outside the box too, and it furthers this art form that we love and encourages it to continue to grow and thrive for years to come.
Knowing that that some of the ensembles will be youth orchestras was an interesting proposition, and it becomes a challenge because you have to take into consideration that they don't have the length of experience that a professional musician has. So I wanted to write something that was not looking down at the fact, oh, they cannot play this. No, I wanted to write something interesting, and that creates engagement. You know, if they like the piece, and even if it's slightly difficult, they engage with it because they want to do it and they want to do it well. Sometimes we don't give enough credit to the ability of people to adapt and to expand their mental frontiers.
Working with Roberto was really interesting. We would have weekly Zoom, I would call them cafecitos. You know, we would just meet for about an hour and a half every week pretty much on Zoom, and he would send me about 30 or 40 bars of the piece, and I would play it for him and show him kind of what it was, and you know, we could possibly change things or this, or he would say, try it with distortion, try it with this effect, that effect, and I'd play it for him. And then the next week he'd send me another 30 bars and we'd do the same thing. And this went on for about 3 months till the piece was finished.
I would send material to him, he would play it in his studio, and we would go back and forth. A lot of it had to do with sounds that you do that in the electric violin, and it's like a violin, but then through pedals and electronic transformations, there are sounds that are created, and he was explaining to me, well, there's this possibility, then there's this possibility. Also techniques that are unique to the electric violin, producing sounds that would be too soft and muted in the sort of acoustic violin, but that with the use of amplification, you could have something that sounds like a percussion instrument, in fact.
It's also great to have somebody else's ideas because, you know, I've written 3 concertos of my own, and what I'm playing by Roberto is very different from anything I would have written. And yet, what's kind of interesting is that I showed him, you know, every week, all of these techniques, my style, my way of doing it, my sort of idiosyncratic approach to playing the instrument, which involves this strumbowing technique and other guitar-like techniques that I've developed over many years of trying to sound like a guitar. And to have somebody write something that utilizes all of that and yet was not something that I wrote, but sort of fits me like a well-made suit. You know, it's just like, wow, how did you do that? It's exactly what I would have written if I was a better composer.
At the beginning, it was, well, how do I approach this? What can I do? But at the end, sort of the instrument sort of became so familiar to me at that point. It was almost second nature as I was writing it, because I was hearing it. I was hearing the instrument as I was writing the notes for it.
The style of the music was very different from what we had done before, and having A professional soloist was different from something we had done before, and especially one who plays electric violin was pretty different. But it was a wonderful way for our students to experience stretching themselves beyond what are traditionally thought as sort of the confines of the orchestra as an institution.
When they expressed interest for the kids, we jumped at that because I love playing with youth orchestras. You know, not that I don't love playing with professional orchestras, but you know, for professional orchestras, it's a gig, it's a hard job, and you know, people work and then they go home. With kids, it's a little different. They're here because they just want to be here, you know, and it's a different kind of energy, a different kind of inspiration that it brings, and also, you know, as somebody who's doing something different on strings, it's really great for me to be able to work with young, talented string players firsthand and show them this is what's possible.
I think it really taught my students to become more independent and rely less on the conductor than they're normally, I would say. With so many new and intriguing details populating the score, the conductor is not in a position to show everything like I like to do. So I had to trust them to provide shapes and swells on their own. And more than at any other point, they had to become more familiar with their immediate and not so immediate environment. I made a case at identifying various planes and work with them at providing the correct balance to help them forge the soundscape.
I think the experience of getting to hear the full piece together, getting to be there with the soloist on the stage and just appreciate like the music was definitely a big release.
It was fascinating to see how quickly the orchestra would adjust to the demands of playing with the soloist, right? And how much it gained flexibility in a short amount of time. The orchestra gives so much energy to the soloist, but the reverse is also very true. So they really kind of feed off each other in a quite spectacular way.
I think this piece had our students think differently and approach music differently. No longer could they rely on audio cues, for example. They really had to make sure they were counting and solid in their independent parts, which is important in any genre, but especially something that feels a little bit less grounded in its melodic elements. So approaching this music and learning it in a different way and really developing and further honing that self-reliance on a part, I think is really mature music making and really valuable skills that we were able to provide for our students.
We were up for the challenge, that's for sure. We were thirsty, we were hungry, and I'm glad it turned out the way it did. It is oftentimes the case where when it comes to new music in particular, the audience's reaction might be a little bit defensive, but in a piece like that, I don't think that was the case.
You know, as an audience member, I thought it was great. You know, just very entertaining, and you know, it was interesting to hear the very different sound of the electric violin with the orchestra.
I think the audience is going to be amazed at how cool this piece is. I think, you know, there's a few things, new music, people are like, this is gonna hurt. Electric violin, this is really gonna hurt. You know, so I think, you know, I really try to make a point in my career to make the sound of the electric violin not only modern and, you know, full of all the rock aggression that it may need, but also beautiful.
I'm definitely really interested in going in a electric acoustic direction now and trying that.
The Richmond Symphony is committed to innovation because we don't want to just become a museum culture with the music that we put on the stage. We want the music that we put on the stage to remain relevant and help all of us who are part of this community feel like the music is expressing the concerns and ideals that we have, not just those things that were expressed in the past.
If we have the means, by that I mean both the imagination and the technique, that we can still create things through the elements in the piece that may become interesting to them, that it sparks the imagination. and that made them think forward, not always be looking backwards.
One of my missions as a musician is to bring new works to the table, to the public, to commission great composers to write great new works. The Richmond Symphony took on a partnership with that by being a co-commissioner in this work, and we need more orchestras like that to take these chances on new music, because all music was new once. The Beethoven Ninth Symphony was new at one point because it was commissioned by a patron. We don't have kings and patrons like that, but the patrons are now the orchestras who take it out of their pockets, which are not usually very full, to do this act of sort of selfless act of future building. And I'm incredibly grateful, incredibly proud of the orchestras that were involved in this project, which the Richmond Symphony is one, the American Symphony, the Vermont Symphony, the Meridian Symphony in Mississippi, and the Yosa Youth Orchestra of San Antonio, all partners together with the Richmond Youth Symphony on bringing this work to the world. And that's really my mission in life. I hope to keep being able to commission new works like this. So I'm just full of gratitude for that.